Even though they've just walked things back, people are not thrilled with Riot Games right now. And that is putting it lightly, and it's all about how Riot are responding to, in their words, quote, an increasing number of players ended up with substantial skin collections for free. Yes, for free. That was a problem. And their initial solution was kind of drastic. It was a massive stepping back of League's reward systems, so much so that their new model to many people barely even would have felt worth playing. And that's on a stack of other criticisms. But now, after significant backlash, Riot have announced a walkback of many of the changes, but underlying issues still remain. It's one of those things where to a lot of people it feels like, hang on a second, that looked way, way, way worse. And now you've walked it back, but it's still worse than what we had before. I'm not saying that it's a conspiracy and that they always planned this. I don't think that's the case, but the real reason why Riot's doing all of this still remains. And it seems that what we've got now is a half measure, and the direction of travel is still concerning. To start off, people were already suspicious because of Battle Pass changes made earlier this year, where basically Riot wanted to move most of League of Legends' XP and reward systems to the free track of the Battle Pass, but with no level up bonuses, basically, and a few other things. Players, especially the most engaged players, just found the new system to be substantially less rewarding. And initially, this looked so bad that it completely appeared that Riot had lost their minds and went completely insane. Now, then we found out that somebody made a mistake pushing this live, or someone at Riot simply got their calculations wrong. So fixes were made, that was good, but of course, obviously the problems did not stop. And the center of all of today's stuff is this, the humble Hextech chest, a loot box. Now, these and the keys that you need to open them can be obtained for free, for an example, as an end-of-match reward for real good performance. And the intent was like Counter-Strike. You get some chests, but you can't open them. So you need to buy keys to open them. And then they sprinkle in a few earnable keys to, get people started, your free sample. Now, this meant that technically, yeah, you could get skins without paying money. Riot initially decided to remove the entire system in favor of the Battle Pass, and that meant that if you enjoyed getting the odd free skin through a Hextech chest, basically screw you, pay up, and you kind of felt like an Overwatch 1 player transitioning to Overwatch 2. The new system just felt worse in every way. People were pissed, so Riot decided to record a video from the head of the League of Legends studio and an executive producer, and that video did not go well. People wanted an apology and they wanted change. What they got was an explanation, one that basically said, hey, this game needs to earn money. It costs money to make. Seemingly, it seems their costs are going up, but their revenue isn't going up as much, and that appears to worry them. Appears to. We'll get to that later. Now, let's talk about the walkback. Riot announced that they are bringing the Hextech chests back, but with significant changes. Oh yes, and the changes actually do matter. So instead of earning them through Champion Mastery, you'll now be getting them through the Battle Pass, because we all love a good Battle Pass. 10 chests and keys per act, with 8 on the free track. Now, they're also adding 2 chests per season through honor-based missions, and in total, people can get up to 60 chests per year over 6 seasons, which is actually compared to the previous of 52 a year. So it actually does initially think, hang on, this is way better than the old system. But no, it's not. Because this requires Battle Pass progression, it will likely require substantially more play than before. I suppose you could technically get more, but from an inordinate amount more hours of gameplay. That's great for Riot. It still builds the business model that they obviously do want to pivot towards. And hey, at least it still is also giving people the experience with Hextech chests that they're kind of used to. But many players just see this as a less straightforward version of the previous system that's just obviously tied to the Battle Pass as the center of Riot's monetization strategy. All of this, though, reeks of Riot needs more money. That makes people think, why do they need more money? What's actually going on here? And can I expect everything to get worse? So let's talk about Riot reeking of greed. Here's an example of some, I think, justifiable outrage that went viral and X for good reason. Just to quote, scams on a daily basis, low value $250 skins, mythic recolors for $125 and post layoff quality declines. That sounds bad, but it's obviously how people feel. And even though Riot have made some changes, the internet remembers. Now, In response to another criticism, the epic Mordekaiser skin that they were doing, which could cost up to $250, has actually now been delayed and updated to feel a bit more exalted because it's of the exalted category. To get you up to speed in that, they've just started to do crazy expensive skins that are via gacha system. There was one themed around Jinx with, of course, the Arcane tie-in. That got a lot of backlash. People just thinking $250 for a skin? What the hell is going on? Obviously, if you're a veteran of playing gacha games, well, you think $250? Those are weak numbers. In this case, though, the Mordekaiser skin was following the same model, but it genuinely seemed to be quite a bit less skin for the same amount of price. So Riot have delayed it. They're also committing, they say, to making these changes across all planned Exalted skins that are coming this year, and they've said they'll be promoting them less heavily through the game client, which I think is kind of interesting, right? It's just that thing where if the game client is too aggressive in wanting your money, it starts to feel hostile, where free-to-play players understand that money needs to be made, but you can still make that feel bad, and that will make somebody go somewhere else. Now, as for rewards, they are planning on now fewer skins on the Battle Pass. They're dropping from 6, 2 being free and 4 being paid, to just 3 themed skins per act, plus of course anything that's coming through the Hextech chests. And with there being less but better skins, they say they can just theme those like better with the champions. So the idea, right, is that more Hextech chests will potentially be more appealing than, say, a skin for a champion that you don't play or like want on the Battle Pass, because basically people do value the Hextech chests. But in terms of player value, this still does represent a reduction in objective value for the Battle Pass, right? Because it does have less skins overall and potentially less mythic essence than before. So as all of this comes together, there are some wins, but it's a bit of a, we've taken steps back, we've taken a step forward. Are we worse off? Probably. Now, to many people, wrapping all of this up and thinking, good lord, it's only, March, and we've already had this many dramas in League, surely this is another example of enshittification. And with that, there's really no wonder that blame is falling to one man, Dylan Jaja. Or maybe it's Jaja. Anyway, the point is, he's been the CEO of Riot Games since 2023. He started that role just before Riot's largest layoff round. So that was lovely. And to many people, this is when Riot began to slide down a slippery slope, even though, of course, Dylan had been president of the Riot board since 2017. Now, obviously, it would be fair to ask if something has changed here. And actually, in this case, something did change. So there's one thing. In 2022, the then CEO of Riot, Niccolo Laurent, announced that Riot had secured its 2023 budget, and that budget was, quote, the biggest of all time. Now, remember, Riot Games is 100% owned by Tencent, so this is a budget that would be agreed between the leaders of each company. And you might then be thinking, hang on a second, they secured their largest ever budget. That should be a good thing, but then they did layoffs, and they're now massively upping their monetization. What the hell happened? Well, at this stage, we can assume profitability and quite a bit else. So how the hell do we explain this? The answer is actually, it's pretty damn simple. You see, if you've had a budget increase for 1 year and then you do layoffs, that actually does make sense. You see, whenever Riot did those layoffs, they actually had real good severance packages and, all of that stuff. It costs you a lot of money in the now to lay people off. Of course, the entire point is you're changing the force structure of your organization so that it can be more profitable as you move forward into the future. So that would be a short-term expensive move in order to, they would hope, long run, be more profitable. And of course, the justification of all of this, like more expensive skins and gacha and all of that stuff, has basically been for the amount of money it costs to make League, we are seeing the ratios of things are getting worse, so they need more money. Now, the way we had seen this most publicly before was essentially the luxury skins, like as an example, that one from Arcane, the Faker skin that made a hell of a lot of headlines. That's one side of things. The other side of things is converting your non-paying players into payers, basically into what the industry would call minnows. People who are not going to spend ludicrous amounts of money in all of the skins, but people who will buy every one of your battle passes. This is basically them trying to get that going. And that's why Hextech chests were initially just killed. But obviously, the Hextech chests are back. They are back, though, on the pass, because ultimately, how they're trying to bring up that base of revenue from their people who aren't big spenders is via the Battle Pass. And it's actually this where we start to see a similarity with Overwatch, but it's not the only similarity. This is all a psychological thing called anchoring, and it has hit both games humongously. So what I want you to do is think about Overwatch when it came out, what people thought of Blizzard of that time, all of the good vibes, right? And the business model, all that stuff. Now, think about similar for Riot, and then think about this Reddit post, which just shows some of the change in tone, right? This Reddit post just kind of summarizes: over 500 staff gone, Riot Forge dead, list of aggressive monetization schemes, all that horrible stuff. That is what happens when you see your customers as cohorts, not individual people. When, they're all cohorts split into groups, displayed in some analytics dashboard. But the thing is, while people make up a data set, and you can look at the average of a data set, people are still individual humans making individual decisions. That is the fundamental mistake that so many companies make. It's one that Blizzard made, and it's one that Riot just made here. And it's all about anchoring. So most people will know about something called price anchoring. It's the basic idea. If I say to you, hey, I'm going to sell you this item for $100. By saying $100, I've anchored the price perception of that item at $100. So if you counter offered me with $80 and I accepted your offer, you would feel, oh great, I got $20 off. But what if I actually never planned to sell that item at $100? I just said 100 to anchor us at a higher number as basically a negotiation tactic. That's one example of psychological anchoring. It happens with games, business models, and stuff like that as well. So League of Legends and Overwatch are both games that have had loot boxes and drama. Why were loot boxes removed from Overwatch? You could say that, well, people's arguments about gambling sort of patterns, that those actually got through. And the direct purchases, even if there's some FOMO, are still less predatory because you know exactly what you are getting. And all of that may be true. But Overwatch players went and played the new game, and they found that the new system felt worse, even though loot boxes are pretty predatory and flawed, right? They fundamentally are just degenerate gambling for money. Now, that's because so many people played Overwatch, got free loot boxes, which could have a nice reward, they slowly got a skin, and they felt good, even if they never engaged in the degen gambling side. Overwatch 2 removed that, and then those players began to feel like, hang on a second, I'm not getting anything as I play. I don't care about this battle pass junk. Now I feel bad. A psychological thing called the overjustification effect, which removes the intrinsic joy that you have in playing a game. That kicks into gear, and suddenly people are not motivated to play Overwatch 2. All because of anchoring and then messing up the player psychology for their loot boxes. With Riot, we actually see a similar pattern here. Now, Riot is not doing what Blizzard did. They actually did not fully implement the removal of the Hextech chests. Those are going to be coming back. And that's Riot fundamentally realizing that this is not about taking one cohort of players and turning them from free players into minnows. It's not just that, even though that is their goal. No, it's about individual players and how playing the game makes them feel. And they've basically realized, no, these loot boxes, the Hextech chests, they actually do need to stay because they're a part of our audience's expectation. Now what they're doing is they are harnessing that to achieve their strategic aim of putting more people in the battle pass. So many people will still see this as a win. They basically said, no, we want Hextech chests, and now they've got Hextech chests. But what Riot have done is they've ensured that Hextech chests are now being acquired by players in a way that meets their strategic business goals by furthering that battle pass. But it's not all rosy, and that's got people concerned, because while they were announcing all of this, they still held to the line that their previous business model was, quote, unsustainable. That does mean that we're not exactly expecting them to have less aggressive asks for money in the future. Now, there are some other changes made to appease players, and they're pretty good. Stuff like reducing the cost of all champions by 50% for the next patch to basically make the game more approachable to new players, addressing concerns about missing features by confirming that your shop will return. People were not pleased that your shop disappeared because, well, it was tailored to you, and that could actually be useful. They're also bringing back the Blue Essence Emporium, and they're bringing back monthly Clash tournaments with a confirmed schedule. That stuff is good, and Meddler from Riot has stated that they will still have to do something. This is regarding the business model, but this round of changes did not work. And that does mean we are not finished with this conversation. There will be more changes down the line at some point, and those changes will be, of course, about how they get more money out of League, and that's inherently going to be controversial. Which means that to the conspiracy-minded, the people who thought, oh, this was Riot's plan all along, they were always going to do this, remove things completely, face backlash, and then introduce a compromise that will be worse than what people, originally had, but would be somewhat acceptable in comparison. The classic, take two away, give one back. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I don't think that would be a smart move to make, but I don't think they did that because honestly, this completely backfired. This has been a disaster. They've just walked things back and they're now trying to set the expectation of, okay, guys, so this is better, but we're still not there yet. We're still kind of unsustainable. Shit. And that makes Riot look weak, look directionless, and also look like something not worthy of investing your time in, because they themselves are admitting that they have fundamental problems with the business model of this game. That does mean that even if these changes are 2 steps back, 1 step forward, but people are happy for that 1 step, that still comes with a tinge of, we're worse than we were before, and we are damn sure it's going to be worse in the future, because we know basically how foobar Riot's situation seems to be. Rough. Absolutely rough, and a lesson in player psychology and how you need to treat your players not as the aggregate that you could predict in some sort of financial model. No, you treat them as single individual people. Do that. Think about the psychology and how people feel, and then you will not have stupid dramas like this that erode confidence in your game. Because by eroding that confidence, they have probably hurt their business, right? And that means that whenever they do need to make more money, they're going to have to make even more money because they hurt themselves here. Man, I don't know how companies with so many psychologists, so many people so well paid to work in monetization, so routinely make these kinds of basic errors of like psychology 101. It's insane to me. Anyway, do you know what's also insane to me? This next story. It's about WB Games. I titled it like basically AAA failing because it wraps up in one beautiful, horrible story exactly the last decade and a bit of just shit going wrong. I think you'll love it, so watch it next.